I want to welcome tonight our very special guest for our first Fireside Chat, Heather Ridout AO, Australian Consul General to the world.
It's great to be here and to be in the company of my compatriots. It always makes you feel G'd up when you're with your fellow Australians. So thank you for including me in it.
Thank you for making the time. Firstly, congratulations on your appointment as Consul General. When we last spoke, you mentioned that although you've regularly travelled internationally for business, you have never actually lived in an international city for work. What have you found to be the most exciting and the most challenging things of living and working in New York?
There was no one more surprised than when I got the call from the Foreign Minister saying, would you like to take up an appointment? And he ended up in New York. And one of the reasons I wanted to do it, I was talking to you about it before, that I really wanted to live overseas in my career, and I had not had the opportunity. I travelled here, AustralianSuper has investments here. Sims has huge operations here in New Jersey. We did all the municipal recycling for New York City. So I had a lot of business connections here, friends here. I have a son who lives here, but I never had the opportunity to work overseas, and there was nowhere in my mind that I would have preferred to work in New York. And it's lived up to expectations. I think Australians are born like that. You know, we're born with a passport, no backpacker. We have to travel. And I think New York is such a quintessentially global city. It's just got people from all different parts of the world, all collected here, all full of energy, wanting to make something happen. And that just scales up everything. And I think, one of the things about Australia is trying to scale up anything is hard yakka. And New York just scales it all up. Then there's just the energy in the city. It just carries you forward. And you either get on a boat or you don't. And I'm pretty keen to get on the boat. And I'm really enjoying that. So I think the energy of your city, and the breadth of it, no matter what area of endeavour, whether it's sport, whether it's the arts, whether it's business, whether it's music, the city is the place of the A grade. And they try to take it to the A+ grade. Then they try to take it up to even better. So there's so much creativity in New York, and you can't escape it. The parks are beautiful. People are trying to do a different style of park. And I've been to so many parks, little parks, and I'll be going to walk with my dog around last night. But, they're all individual too. So there's something quite special and detailed and granular about New York. And you've not like seem to be here with people someone's cared about it or had of it. So that's what I love about it. The challenges, well, I'm trying to think like an American. I think that's hard. We're so similar, but we're so different. And I think New Yorkers and Americans on steroids everywhere. And I think that's something you have to get used to. But I think I think that's good. I think it's, again, culturally challenging and makes you grow as a person. So that's part of why I went to work overseas. So, and I think just finding a niche where you're comfortable. I've only been here a very short period of time, 3 months. But you can stick to your neighbourhood, but I don't want to do that. So, I think getting that sort of comfort zone, but also that confidence to move out and about much more normally. So, yeah, lots of excitement, mostly London. And I should say, the top, I've got this extraordinary job, which enables me to plug in to all these different areas of endeavour, which are so wonderfully well here, not only by Australians, but of course by Americans. So, it's great.
Now, naturally, we'd all love to hear more about your career path. Perhaps you could share some insights leading up to your appointment as CEO of the AO Group.
Well, I was born in the country, in a twin sister. Went to Sydney University, did economics. I was going to become a teacher, but I really didn't think I had the patience, which I didn't. Ended up working for a politician as a research assistant. which I really enjoyed. So I was always interested in the interface between economics and policy, public policy and politics, because there's not much point having great ideas if you can't make them or can't implement them. So I worked in for a couple of years, and then this crowd called the Metal Trades Industry Association used to send submissions to the Senator, which I agreed with, and write braces, and actually got quite a few good ideas from it. I got to know the people there, and they offered me, and I was the first female professional ever employed by the organisation, which is 100 years old, more than 100 years old, and it was an industrial relations organisation. Can you imagine walking into that? So I had done industrial relations with the university, but had no idea what I was talking about. There were no trade unions within the university. So I then spent many 33 years in that organisation, and became the first female director. I shaped my own job, became the first public policy director, which I loved. Worked with media, did an awful lot of that. And then the chief executive was going to retire. They'd offered a job to another bloke who was junior guy. And I was offered another job, and I was so indispensable to the organisation, they said, what will it take to stay? And out of somewhere came these words, I want to be the deputy chief executive. Well, if you want another $200,000 or anything like that, it was set. And that meant that I was in the succession line. And I became chief executive of the first female again, which was the best. I didn't really want to be a CEO. I love public policy. I love having long lunches with journalists, and, all that good stuff. But being a CEO was 9 years most rewarding life. And then after that, I was at the peak of my powers. Really, the organisation was going brilliantly. We were highly regarded. We'd gone through very tough times when we had to stand up for what we thought was important. And of course, as a leader, you're showing that. I decided that it was time to hand over to someone else and see whether I could do something else that work for this organisation for 3 years. So I left, and within 6 months, I was on the Reserve Bank of Australia. I'd helped form AustralianSuper. Greg Conway formed the fund. So I was already on board with that. They said you have to build shares. And then I was appointed to 6, and then the ASX said, we need someone, you'd be perfect. So within 6 months, I had a full dance card. And also, I was on board with the Australian Chamber which I loved. So my career was really, wonderful. And then I did 12 years, 11 and a half years of that. I sat on those boards all that time, except the Reserve Bank. And actually, during the Reserve Bank board, I was on the note printing, which went through the whole new generation banknote process. And the chair of that board was Michelle Bullen, who's just become the Reserve Bank, and she and I are great friends. And then I got the call to come here. So I think the thread of my career has been purposeful. 90% of economists are like greatness, and education gives you the opportunity to choose a life of value. And I think all the smart people I knew at the Reserve Bank, all the smart people I knew at AustralianSuper, they all want to choose a life of value. And I'm pretty fortunate. I think that thread of being able to contribute to public service, to public policy, has been the thread of my career. And I would say my career's been not linear. My husband was made a partner at 3 years at 28. I said, what are you going to do now? My career was not like that. It was up and down, as I said, really passed over. Yeah, it was a surprise. I didn't plan. I didn't say this goes with that, goes with that. I just kept pushing, kept striving in not a ruthless, overly ambitious sort of way, but just kept doing the things I was passionate about. And so then in New York, so that's my career journey.
Well, one of my questions was your appointments to the board of the ASX and RBA.
Yeah.
I mean, were they strategic goals, or did they just happen? But I think you may have answered that.
They did just happen. And I think it was a dream of mine to be on the board of the Reserve Bank. As a student of economics, and I loved it. And they were the easiest board papers I ever read. All the others were hundreds of pages of audit reports and risk and, all this, lot of arcane stuff. But Reserve Bank board members were about economics. I remember walking in for my first board meeting and seeing my name tag, little silver name tag on it. And I thought, what am I doing? And, nothing's happened. So, like I felt when I walked into the Consul General's office in New York, that is it. But it was a surprise. But, it really is about, I always say to the guys, 70% of the job's written down, the other 33% you create yourself. And that's usually created out of the stuff that interests you, that you get passionate about. But if you follow the things that really interest you, you usually become quite good at it because you really strive and push hard in the work. There's a lot of boring stuff in most jobs. There's plenty in mine, but I've always tried to find these areas that interested me, and that's what I will say to other people, and that makes the organisation grow because that 30% of people creating themselves innovates and changes the organisation for the better.
Well, one of the other topics we discussed was, from our experience during COVID-19, many of our members who were repatriated expressed that the US experience did not transfer into professional currency in Australia, in the Australian job market. Can you speak to that, and do you have any thoughts on how we can improve the experience transfer?
Well, I guess first-hand experience, I gave up terrific opportunities, which I was doing with EQT and I was to take this job. So I'm hopeful when I go back, I'll still have something to offer. But I think there's a few things. One of the most important things in moving forward in business is relationships. You've got to work on them, you've got to nurture them, you've got to form them. This is why I say to young people, go back into the office and not form a relationship over Zoom. You must do it. And, I hate the word networking, I hate it, but I do think it's about relationships. So I think Australia is an insular country. So are most countries, we're not alone in that. If you go home, having had 5 years in America, senior level, they'll say, oh, well, I've got that guy across the road at JP Morgan, something, he's got this cookie cutter, he's got this skill level. We don't want to really take a risk on you, even though your skills are interesting. They're very, very risk averse. If you're doing a job that is a cookie cutter job, like an accountant or something like that, you might find it a lot easier. But I really do believe it is not easy to go back to Australia cold. So my strongest advice to you all is every time you go home, you keep up your relationships. 90% of jobs in Australia are not through word of mouth. So unless you have someone, speaking for you and telling you there's an opportunity, you should be aware of it. You've just got to keep your linkages up. I think it's a pity that Australia is not more valuing of overseas experience. I mean, in the financial sector, they transfer people around all over the place. But it isn't easy because it's not an easy grind. And I know from my kids' position, I've seen many of them, spend years in China, speak land, come home, or meant to be all about China, and struggle to get a job. What? Doesn't make sense. So keep your relationships good. Work at them. Just don't go home and see your friends and your family. Get around a little bit and keep in touch with people virtually. You can do it. So it's good insurance for when you go home, because that'll be, I think.
It's interesting. I looked at the database and we have around 8,000, I think, Australians who have gone through our organisation over the last 13 years. And we still track them in Australia. So, my thought was that sometimes we do get folks who actually go back to Australia and want to come back. So we don't sort of delete them because I call them boomerangs. There's been quite a few over the last few years. They go back to Australia and go, I hate it, coming back to the US.
People go home for a reason. I mean, they would come here and stay for a long time. They come here, want the experience, then they want to go. So,
my point, I suppose, is that we have these connections and they now have senior roles in Australia. So anyone who's traversing back to Australia and they want to contact in a company, an Australian company that's been over here and gone through the pain, I think that is something that we could perhaps look at one day as well.
It's keeping these linkages. It's just that.
We've almost finished. Are there any initiatives you have identified that you would like to champion as your role as Consul General?
Well, I mean, I think the Australian government it's an extraordinary time for being here. Australia and America are doing so much together. The AUKUS submarine project, which probably makes page 8 in America, the newspapers on the front pages of my kids from Ireland, here in Australia. But that is really huge. But the Pillar 2 part, which is all about capabilities in AI, quantum computing, supersonics, all of these sciencey areas, that's huge. And then there's the energy transition, which we're doing together, which is also now part of this compact. And then there's all the related legislation around the Inflation Reduction Act, which is bringing together this weird new economics that we're in with the energy transition. I think that is an area that we have to focus on and try and maximise Australian opportunities in that space. And that is for research collaboration, it's for small companies who have terrific technology. A lot of the critical minerals investments in Australia are being explored by small companies, not by great big companies. They're all small companies. So I think that whole area is going to be a huge focus for me. And it's often about capacity, capital and capability. And Australia has very deep pockets of capital. The funds that I was part of, we grew from 15 billion to 300 billion in 15 years. And we're now part of a $2.4 trillion savings pool in US dollars in Australia. And a lot of it's invested offshore. So how we actually harness that capital to the benefit of the members of those funds in Australia, and AustralianSuper has got an office here, we've grown out of it, new office, but a number of others here as well. So that is an area to try and build more understanding, more connections. There is another area. So on top of just being Australia's representative here, getting around, passing on the key messages that we need to do, supporting Australians when they come through in all sorts of endeavours. I think those areas which are going to really shape the Australian-US relationship for the next foreseeable future are things I have to pay attention to. For your information, it really fascinates me. The AUKUS submarine project is a 100-year project. From the time we made the decision, the time that last submarine was planned to be retired, is 100 years. So it's quite hard to get your head around. And that's why it's interesting, and that's only about a quarter of what the AUKUS things are about. It's all the stuff we really can make a huge contribution to, which is on the science side.
Final question. True or false? You don't choose New York, New York chooses you.
Well, New York chose me. Well, the government chose New York for me. But look, I think I would have chosen New York. So it's just such a great city. So yeah, I hope to. If I leave here and think that New York chose me, I'll actually become, it sounds cliche, but to feel comfortable in the city, to feel you're contributing to the city, that you're keeping pace with the city. That to me that's how I want to feel. That's it.
Well, Consul General, thank you so much for your time tonight. I know you have to rush away, but we do really truly appreciate you coming along and meeting some of our members and also sharing some thoughts to our viewers who aren't present. But again, thank you so much for your time.
Well, it's been